Hello, and welcome back to Mini Adventures Mini. This week, the miniature I'm planning on painting is a continuation of the Wrath of Ashardalon board game set. This one is kind of just a small beholder. Some people might be familiar with them. Beholders are kind of a very classic Dungeons and Dragons monster. This one is a little bit different from normal. It's a smaller version, but I'll go a little bit into what beholders are like. They tend to be kind of like your big bad of an adventure. They're very much a boss monster. They're big floating eyeballs with eye stalks, basically, and they tend to be very evil, very smart, very cunning. They tend to be the what kinds of monsters that lay out grand plans and possibly even rule over what they believe to be the unruly masses. All the beholders believe that they are perfect, and anything that's not exactly like them is evil and wrong, and they want to destroy it. And that includes any other beholders that aren't exactly the same as them, so they tend to fight amongst each other as well. But this one is a smaller version, which I believe makes it more of like a spectator beholder. It's a version of a beholder that a wizard can summon using beholder eye stalks as a material component. And they contract these beholder spectators for a period of 101 years in order to guard a location or a treasure. And these spectators will just stay in that area and live like that. And they can be communicated with, though they tend to start going a little crazy because they tend to spend that entire time in isolation. So they tend to not be that great at conversationalists. And that's really kind of the gist of it. So I think this one will be interesting. So let's go ahead and jump in and I'll show you how I painted this one up. Alright, so here's the pre-images for this Beholder Spectator. The reason I'm not 100% sure on this one is because Spectators typically only have 4 eye stalks, but this one has 6. But because of the size, I decided to go with Spectators. That's why I went with the color scheme I decided on. And here I'll show you, I went ahead and just did a lot of my pre-work ahead of time. I've primed it, based it with some large rocks to make it look like rubble, and done some simple zenithal highlighting with my airbrush to get the bright colors down to the dark here in just a gray gradient. And then I go ahead and pull out this angel green just with some paint medium to thin this down without using too much water to try and maintain the right kind of viscosity on the paint. And I thin it down with a little bit of water, and I just start layering that on. And this turns the paint into kind of a glazing effect that lets the underlying light values I've already established shine through, while just tinting everything the color I've chosen. In this case, the green. And I just thoroughly apply that everywhere that I can, and then I set it down to let it dry, and then come back and do it again. And I have to do this step several times, maybe 5 or 6 times in this case, to get it down to the color value that I want, the opacity, and everything still shines through pretty great. But after a couple layers, I use this dragon red to hit some other colors while I'm waiting for stuff to dry. So I'll get the mouth there, and then I'll use that moon dust to go ahead and get the color for the eyes. I decided to go with this one because it seemed like the appropriate kind of like alien monster eyeball color rather than having the whites of his eyes. It's the yellows of his eyes. And I liked the way it looked, so I just stuck with that. It's working out pretty good for me, so I just hit that on all the ends of his eye stalks as well as his main eye once I can get into it with the glaze being dried. But since I'm still doing layers of that, I keep doing that before I try and get into that main eye there. And like I was saying, I have to do several layers here. I'm doing my best not to cut out as much as I can stuff that's going on with these, so I finally get that main eye colored in. And I'm using just a little bit of the dragon red here to fill in the edges of the eye and just give it a bit of a more realistic look and break it up. And I liked it enough that I go ahead and do it on the rest of these eyes as well, just trying to make it look like there's some bloodshot things going on there on the eyes, which was an effect I liked the way it came out. And when that's all dried, I go ahead and use the matte black just to paint on the pupils and get that full eye color that we're looking for. And then I get out my dark stone and uniform gray and start working a little bit on the base here, just getting my slightly brown dark stone color and just giving everything a thorough coating. And I've got to let that dry thoroughly before I go in with the gray, but I got it on there for now. And again, more layering. It's one of those processes where you have to be very patient. So this is one where I tend to paint on it and then let it sit and go do something for 10-15 minutes while I let it dry so I don't go back to it too quickly. And then of course I also use this skeleton bone just to get the teeth and pick them out, and they're looking pretty good even just like this, but I do try to do a bit more with them later. I also try here to do a little bit of dry brushing on the stones here with the uniform gray just to bring the color up a little bit. And then I use this burnt umber wash to stain the teeth and make them look a little grittier. And I also use a black wash to get the base, just to get the darker recesses, and then again dry brushing more with the dark stone before I black in the edges of the base. And I'm just about done here at this point. I'm getting pretty close, so I use my glue to get around the base between some of the large stones. Then I bring in this very fine flock. It almost looks a little bit like moss once I put it on there, which I like the look of. Then I just clean it up a little bit with a brush, get it off of the areas I didn't intend it for, before I come in with my usual Vallejo matte varnish and give everything a thorough coat. But after this, I do decide to come back in with my gloss varnish as well, just to hit all of the eyes so that they look glossy and wet. I don't normally do this with eyes, but it's useful when they're bigger like this so that they look shiny. And then we've got our final images. I really like the way this one came out. It's a very simple miniature, but it was still a lot of fun to put together, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any feedback, please go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section below. I love to get any form of feedback that I can. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps out tremendously. And if you want to see any more of my videos, please go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever any of my videos go up. And I really appreciate everybody hanging around to the end of the video, and I hope to see you all next week.